So, folks, we need to talk about the fact that this piece is hitting Politico. And, I don't think many people are going to make much of this, right? Hochul helped Mamdani. Now she's setting limits. And I found this to be pretty interesting because, well, Kathy Hochul isn't really setting limits, right? Like, it's what's interesting about this is that Zohran Mamdani has gotten everything he wanted from Kathy Hochul. Everything. And Kathy Hochul, on her side of things, has gotten everything she wanted from Zohran Mamdani. Namely, she got an endorsement, right? And this piece really does seem to be designed not for any kind of like educated readership. It seems designed for, well, the donor class, essentially. Uh, Governor Kathy Hochul helped New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani close a massive budget gap. Next year may be different. Now, what's interesting about this is that this is not news. Like, this was well known last month when the story about balancing the New York City budget broke, right? Because part of that story was that Zohran Mamdani had used one-time cash infusions from the state of New York in order to balance the budget. And I talked about it at the time that this was actually pretty smart. Like, it allowed him to balance the budget this year and punt the football to next year to, like, have a more intense showdown as his popularity rises because he's actually accomplished things like balancing the budget. He's basically set the stage for the battle he's going to have next year, which is to pass more taxes on the municipal level against millionaires, billionaires, etc. And like, that's part of his plan, quite clearly. But this is quite interesting because Politico's acting like this is new information, and it's just not. The governor told Politico in an exclusive interview that the 34-year-old first-time mayor needs to get a handle on the Big Apple spending after she gave the city additional cash and backed an annual surcharge on pricey second homes. Now they have their own team in place, she said in a one-on-one interview at the governor's mansion in Albany. They control the budget. They need to look hard at spending. They need to identify programs that are not serving what they should or that are out of control in scale. And asked if the mayor should anticipate a different dynamic when he pieces a budget together next year, Hochul said they manage their budget now, which is interesting because, again, this seems designed to be like, don't worry, donors, we're not going to help him out anymore, which absolutely was the case, right? Like, that was always going to be the case. Kathy Hochul only needed something from Zohran Mamdani right now because she's seeking re-election, right? Like, she is like seeking to get his endorsement, which she got. So the leverage has for a time ended. And so she's willing to kind of be like, well, I'm going to maintain positive relations with Mamdani, but I'm not going to, do him any more favors. And that's kind of what her centrist donors are looking for, right? They want to make sure, like, she's not going to go full socialist in favor of Zohran. What is interesting about this, again, is that she is trying to take credit for a lot of the good things that he has done, like childcare or the various other initiatives that he's been pushing on the city-wide level. And it's just kind of like, okay, but none of this is an attack on Zohran Mamdani directly. All of it is just signaling to donors, I'm not going to be going further left on these issues. And I think that's fine. I think that's fine because Zohran won this exchange. Like, this battle went back and forth, and Zohran got the better of her. She knows that. Everyone in the political knows that. And donors are scared. And I think it's good when centrist donors are scared and concerned about rising leftist stars in this country. And so what I find very interesting is that Mamdani, in the meantime, is building a New York-based leftist coalition. We A couple days ago, we covered an ad that Ben Shapiro showed that had him, assembling with like Brad Lander, and it's been interesting to say the least. He's assembling a team, as it were. And Mamdani, by endorsing Hochul, did snub a farther left candidate in the governor's race, Representative Adriano Espiat, right? And or not not Adriano Espiat, the Antonio Delgado, my bad, who is the lieutenant governor. And meanwhile, Mamdani has drawn blood from Hochul's team by opposing, and this is where I got it confused, Representative Adriano Espiat, because he has opposed that that re-election campaign. And that, I think, again, indicates that the conflict here between the left wing and the center of the Democratic Party is far from over. The fight is just delayed. It is being prolonged, and it's going to be on more favorable footing the more popular Zohran Mamdani gets. And I wanted to take a look at this because stuff like this from the conservative far right helps Zohran Mamdani, and I don't think they really understand that. I think if they do, they are pushing it because they're hoping to inoculate more conservative parts of the country from potentially being wooed by the siren song of socialism, right? So here's Mark Wayne Mullen on Fox News talking about Zohran Mamdani in New York City.
I love that about you, and I love that about Tom Homan. You say we can't come, we're coming.
Absolutely. You're not going to tell us where we can and cannot enforce our nation's laws, because we are not, Sean, picking and choosing which laws we enforce. We enforce the laws that Congress passed. And for Mayor Mamdani, who's absolutely destroying a great city like New York, to say that ICE needs to be abolished, I mean, come on, they're immigration custom enforcement. That's their job. And so he wants to have open borders and wants to allow criminals to run their streets. Well, his constituents don't want that. And they want law.
I love that about you, and
he's destroying New York City by opposing ICE. That, like, you're literally just listing some of his greatest hits, you know? Literally just listing some of his greatest hits. Now, I will say, Zohran Mamdani has so far failed trans youth, and I'm not entirely sure why. It does seem to be something that is calculated, and he did in a recent interview pledge that they are working on trying to find a solution that allows them to support trans youth and get them the care that they need without getting government retaliation, right? Essentially, they don't want the federal retaliation for helping trans youth, but they want to figure out a way to do it. I don't know if they're going to be able to square that circle. It seems to me like the only solution there is to go fight. There are already orders in place for the hospitals in New York City to comply with gender-affirming care for trans kids. And I'm not entirely sure why those hospitals have not yet resumed care. That, I think, is a big problem. I do think it is one that they are working on. And I assume that largely due to the fact that Zohran Mamdani has created an entire section of the New York City government dedicated to handling LGBTQ issues that is headed by a trans woman. There are trans women on his team that have publicly attested to the fact that they are working on it. I do think that they are working on it. I do think that people need to see more results quite a bit faster. That is maybe the one big disappointment I have so far. He wants to be able to have trans youth healthcare without making the government angry, while Zohran is both not enforcing things on private hospitals and is also opening public clinics that do not serve people under 19. That's the thing. And that's what makes me wonder what the hell is going on, because no one in the administration and no one in DSA New York seems to be willing to talk about what is going on. Folks on the inside, like our very own Gamer G, haven't been able to get any information from New York City DSA, and that's weird. That in of itself is weird. And I'm hoping that that's because they are working on something that will roll out relatively soon, and they want to keep it relatively quiet to avoid backlash. But we'll see. We'll see. I do think that for someone like Zohran in particular, public displays to try and get him to account for it, or to members of his team to account for it, might be very successful. Because again, a large part of his power comes from his popularity. So, we'll have to see. I feel he betrayed us. I'm not sure that is the case. But I speak from a place of privilege because I'm not one of the people being affected by that trans youth healthcare ban. So I'm sure that the kids and the families affected by this feel very differently. Room to build an alternative for those kids is needed right now. There's a tightrope to walk, which Mamdani is sort of forced to as mayor, no matter how progressive or not he is. I mean, that is the other thing, right? Like, there is a cost-benefit analysis that goes on. And, like, that is deeply disappointing to me, a citizen. But I imagine that there is an enormous amount of pressure as mayor of New York City, and trying to figure out how to walk the tightrope, as you say. Like, I don't envy that position. I don't envy it at all. I work with trans kids in New York City. I'm furious. Yeah. I didn't want him to meet with Trump either. Yeah, but that's the other thing, right? Like, he is meeting with Trump in an effort to block the worst effects of the Trump administration falling on New York City.
My superego, id, and ego told me Donald Trump is a child-bred dictator. I'm inclined to believe them. Smiley cat face emoji, herb emoji.
That's true. 2D Synctium, thank you for the $10 super chat. It just sucks we're playing political battleship with human rights, like the Republicans yell out B12 and they're going to sink our battleship. Yeah. That compromise worked so well during AIDS, didn't it? I mean, I do think that this is very different from AIDS, the AIDS epidemic, but your point is taken, right? Like, I think that, like, what he's trying to do is prevent masked men from killing people in the streets of New York City, like they did in Minneapolis, you know? And I do think that another thing he's trying to do is make sure that hospitals don't suddenly have their federal funding cut, because that will literally kill people if that happens. And so, like, that's a real cost to weigh. And I do think that there is, like, potentially an upside to that, but it's an upside that might be bought in blood, right? Like, the upside might be, oh, people see that federal funding is cut to the hospitals in New York City, and suddenly people start dying because they can't get the care they need. And, like, that affects people beyond trans kids, and suddenly more people care about it. And, like, that might eventually be the play, but I think not rushing to that conclusion is reasonable, if that makes sense. I mean, he's potentially killing trans youth right now. Well, yes, but understand he has a larger constituency, right? Like, that's the problem. Genuine question, what stops him from making the separate public trans healthcare programs he is opening that are not tied to the hospitals, not funded by federal, and only funded by state and city? Honestly, I think it's because he's trying to navigate some kind of informal agreement that he has with the Trump administration. Like, as far as I can tell. I don't know exactly what is going into the decision-making around, like, trans clinics in New York City, and I'm really, really keen to find out. There seems to be a lot of information that is being deliberately withheld, and I want to know why. Like, when we start getting into the hardball of politics, we have to understand, like, a lot of lives are on the line in hospitals. If this is all political handshakes, fuck him royally. I understand the sentiment, but also Donald Trump is the kind of guy where everything is just a power game and an optics game, and political handshakes are sometimes the only thing he's got. you know? Sometimes a political handshake in that circumstance might be the thing that it stands between like billions of dollars going into your hospital system and allowing the hospitals to function or not. And like, I want more information specifically to know if Zohran is rat fucking us. Because if it turns out that he is, then of course I'm deeply, deeply furious. And if instead there is like some kind of plan in the works, as has been intimated in like a lot of his team's public appearance on this, then I want to know what that plan is as soon as fucking possible. Because personally, I think if there's nothing legally stopping it, why can't they open specific clinics that are only funded by state and city and thus are not beholden to federal funding? Like, I know it's not why can't he just? I know it's this is super complicated. I'm just thinking about alternative options. I mean, part of what might be happening is that their plan is to set up like this, and this is purely speculation on my part. I have no insider information that indicates whether this is the case. But I would speculate maybe part of what is going on with these clinics is that they are launching the clinics to exist as separate entities, independent of state and city funding, so that once they are set up, they can then be retrofitted to serve trans youth. And like, that might not be something that they are terribly keen to advertise prior to the clinics coming online. Does that make sense? Because I think you're right. I don't think there's anything legally stopping them from doing that. But I do think that that might be something they are interested in more quietly launching in an effort to reduce backlash that could spill over to other New Yorkers. And it's not, I recognize that it is quite a cold comfort to like speculate and just hypothetically like throw out ideas like that. But that's where I'm at. And I think that's where most of us can do on this, because in the absence of any additional information, his team keeps saying they're working on it. He keeps saying that they're working on it. And I don't have reason to believe that they're lying, but I am deeply dissatisfied with their progress. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at on that one. Now, I did want to go over this particular exchange, right? Because we're not quite done talking about Mamdani. I thought this interview that he did with MS Now was quite interesting. This aired about 4 days ago, and it is a really interesting back and forth that I think does have sweeping ramifications for not just New York politics, but for the politics of the rest of the country. Because I think it gives insight into what Mamdani is trying to do. I think maybe that also gives us maybe some insight into what he, like, or at least makes me think that he is being genuine when he talks about looking for solutions for trans kids. Obviously, it hasn't been good enough so far, but let's just take a look at this interview.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Such a pleasure. Thank you for being here.
Let us into City Hall. After you win in the primary, I'm going to take you back a little bit.
I'm going to turn up the volume on this, actually.
The New York Times ran a headline that said, Mamdani triumphed without a majority of black voters. There have been questions and criticism about what kind of mayor you would be for black New Yorkers, but there's been some recent polling by the New York Times that found black folks here in New York had the highest approval rating of you.
And to be clear, I'm not saying just because I have hope that he's being genuine, I'm not saying everyone should shut up about it. I am, in fact, saying people should get louder about it, because being loud in politics matters.
The ethnic group by 55% was what they said. What do you think changed?
You know, I think that for a number of voters, it was the first time that they were hearing of me. You know, I recall at the time in that primary, it was an introduction more than an ability to persuade someone. And I knew that I was going up not only against another candidate, but frankly against a legacy of a name. And in the time since then, we've been able to show exactly what we are governing for, and that is the working person. And when we talk about a focus on the cost of living crisis, we know that for Black New Yorkers, that's not an intellectual concern. The city has lost 200,000 Black New Yorkers over the last few decades alone. From 2010 to 2019, we saw a 19% drop in the population of Black children and teenagers. So in focusing on the affordability crisis, in delivering on that crisis, we are finally bringing the struggles of Black New Yorkers and New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs to the heart of our politics and not just to the footnotes of it.
Yeah. There's been a long-running criticism, argument made about Bernie Sanders, Democratic Socialists in general, that Democratic socialism treats class as the primary lens and race.
Okay, we also need to, I'm noticing now we need to make this mono audio.
As secondary, even sometimes
there we go.
It completely. The assumption being,
and I do think we need to turn it up a little bit louder, actually.
That if you fix the economic inequality, racial inequality will just follow and doesn't require its own focus. It seems like you're saying you disagree with that.
I think that we need to have a vision that encompasses all of these things. We have to have an understanding of the impacts of class, and we have to have an understanding of the impacts of race. You know, we cannot divorce the racial inequities we see across the city, which are so stark in just the measurements of median household wealth and income, from the political choices and decisions that have been made over many years. And, you know, I even think about there was a policy that Rudy Giuliani had implemented of a tax lien sale. We found that the city was 6 times more likely to sell tax liens in a Black neighborhood than in a white neighborhood. That's, you know, that and the impact that it has on home.
Oh, this is interesting. Just the other day, Mamdani gave an exclusive interview to The Advocate and said that he hopes the measures his administration has adopted so far can help protect the city's LGBTQ plus community. Quote, "We view it as part of a longer-term commitment to safeguarding the rights of queer and trans people across the city, across ages," but then was very, did not specify how that would affect trans kids. And earlier he did talk about how the city's Gender Affirming Care Fund would help residents of all ages, but did not specify how it would apply to trans youth. So again, there is a lot of language that he is employing publicly to talk about how the city is going to support trans youth. The details are pretty sparse, though. But the fact that he has continued to intimate this, I think, indicates that there is something concrete on the way. At least I fucking hope so.
Homeowners, one of the reasons why we put a pause to that sale. And I think it just speaks to the many ways in which government has exacerbated racism across not just the city, but frankly, across.
Well, I mean, I would love to turn on subtitles. Unfortunately, this video does not have subtitles available.
Our country through its political choices, and it's time to actually address it through not only acknowledgement, but frankly through affirmative policies.
Yeah. Even with that, with the numbers that we saw from this New York Times Mayor's poll, there's still critics. There's always going to be some who say that you're still not doing enough. There was a lot of criticism about whether or not you had enough Black staff, enough Black people around you who are political professionals. What do you say to them?
You know, I think it's a city of 8.5 million people. I don't begrudge any New Yorker of their opinion. I'd frankly be concerned if we had 8.5 million people agreeing on one thing besides the Knicks. I think there's a lot of agreement. We're incredibly excited. And I think this is an administration where we're looking to not only reflect the city at large, but also to address the concerns of the city at large. And to have this opportunity right now, it's one where we can show that it's going to be about delivering universal child care for the first time in New York City history for 2-year-olds. It's also going to be about paving over 102,000 potholes in 100 days. That's the way in which we can combine a pothole politics that shows that there's no problem too big, no task too small.
Yeah. I want to move to the racial equity plan.
Please.
From the city. The Times reported that the administration chose not to restore references to diversity, equity, and inclusion that had been cut from a draft that you inherited from Mayor Eric Adams, and that officials expected federal blowback. So I guess, did you or someone on your team keep that DEI language out of there because of a fear with the fight with the Trump administration?
The focus.
I think there's also, they're talking about fighting the Trump administration right now. I think there's also an element of this where they want to finalize the budget and get it passed. because again, a lot of the language around the budget has indicated, oh, the 15 million or so dollars allotted for trans affirming care is going to go towards services for trans kids. What exactly that form takes will probably be included more specifically in a finalized budget, which is expected by the end of the month. But again, details right now are pretty slim.
That we had when it came to that report was one, actually releasing it. The prior administration had stonewalled its
apparently, according to the Gothamist, he talked about this on the Brian Lehrer show, and Mamdani claimed that this will go towards services for trans kids, but again, less than what he initially pledged, 65 million. But with the budget not being finalized yet, it remains to be seen whether or not that 15 million will become 65 million or what exactly this is all going to work out to be. So I'm guessing that they're going to be relatively cagey about the specifics of the budget until it gets finalized.
Release over many years. The second focus was how can we not only name the racial inequities in this city that are so obvious for anyone who is looking, but also start to put together a framework that would address those inequities. And the third focus was how can we ensure that all of this will stand up to whatever pressure it faces? Because as we all know, whenever you name racism for what it is, there is an immense pressure to try and back away from that. We wanted to put together the strongest legal argument to ensure that we could actually move forward on it, and that's what we found in this report.
So a legal argument that doesn't include the words DEI. Do the words matter in there?
I think all of the argument that...
Like, this is exactly kind of what I'm talking about, right? Like, part of what he's doing here is basically trying to appease the Trump administration, saying, we're going to do all of the same things that we were going to do with a program that was explicitly labeled DEI, but we're not going to label it DEI. We're going to do all of the same shit. And you guys won't understand that we're not, we are not actually kowtowing to your positions simply because we're not using DEI as a phrase. I think that this is similar to how he's approaching a lot of other issues that are sensitive to the Trump administration.
We laid out is one that we believe can withstand.
Because again, I know I'm being a pause champ, because again, the Trump administration is made up of the biggest fucking snowflakes on the planet, but also most of them are very stupid. So if you just remove DEI but keep all the programs the same, they will not know the difference.
Whatever pressure comes from the federal administration. And for us, what we found is that New Yorkers care more about what we can deliver than...
It's genuinely a grandpa won't notice. Grandpa won't notice, fam. He's too busy talking about ballrooms.
The process by which we get to it, and that's exactly what we're looking to do, is finally deliver a vision for racial equity that is able to get into a material consequence for New Yorkers.
On April 6th, the Assistant Attorney General, Harmeet Dillon, posted that your plan, quote, sounds fishy and illegal, will review, exclamation point. Have you had any actual communication with the Justice Department over this?
You know, I have not had direct communication myself. Our team is always in communication with the federal administration over a number of areas of disagreement, but we are fully confident in this report and in our ability to withstand any pressure.
Yeah. Are you worried about them coming here and I don't know, taking federal funds in order to change the plan that you have?
Yeah, I think none of our values or our laws are bargaining chips, and we will not step back in the face of any of this kind of pressure because we're not embarrassed about these things. We're proud of them. It's what makes us New Yorkers. And so if the federal government has issues with this report or any other policy, we look forward to that conversation, but it's not one we're going to shirk from.
You're one of the maybe only mayors, Democrats, who has engaged with Donald Trump and the Trump administration publicly, and it seems like everyone left not fighting. What is the trick to that conversation in the relationship with Donald Trump that other mayors maybe could take a note from?
Well, I think it is unfair in that I have an advantage in that we are both from New York City, and we share a love of the city amidst...
Mamdani hates America. Dude literally, bikes the city every day and makes videos that are essentially love letters to the city. It's crazy that conservatives are so deluded that they're like, he hates America, when every day he's posting a I fucking love this neighborhood. Let's go get something to eat. I love New York City. Let's fill potholes. Like it's genuinely, the attacks leveled against Zohran Mamdani are so absurd. Absurd.
Many disagreements that we have, whether about the country or about the city. And one thing that the president said to me as well as to the public is the better the city does, the happier he is. And in that, I ensure that our conversations are focused on how we can do better for the city. And that doesn't mean shying away from disagreement. You know, I've sat directly with the president and I've spoken to him about the fact that I believe that ICE raids are cruel and inhumane. I believe they do nothing to serve the interests of public safety. It just means being honest and ensuring that it isn't a conversation around personality or the two people who are there, but rather around the people of New York City and how we can deliver for them.
I think you called him a fascist at the Oval Office, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
When was the last time you two spoke?
Yeah, I keep the nature and the cadence of those conversations between the two of us, but I will tell you that
recently,
whenever we have the conversation,
God damn, when he, like, you gotta respect his game as a politician. He's talking about having to be in communication with one of the most odious men on the planet, who holds like an insane amount of power relative to a mayor of a city, and like he manages to still deploy like that fucking charming smile that's just insanely dazzling. It's genuinely deeply impressive because he's very clearly deflecting to not answer this question, but he's doing it behind a smile that is genuinely so charming that you're just like, of course he can't answer that. Let's move on.
It's about the city of New York.
Yeah. You ran as an insurgent against the establishment. What has governing taught you in the last 6 months or so that campaigning didn't?
I think what's incredible about governing is you have the opportunity to deliver. Mm-hmm. During a campaign, you're asking people to believe. And for some New Yorkers, that's easier. But for others who've lived through decades of politicians coming to them with promises and then abandoning them as soon as they have the opportunity to lose their principles, it's hard for them to believe. And so in governing, you can say, I understand why you weren't there in the beginning, but now, when we're paving these potholes, when we're delivering universal childcare, when we're establishing the office to prevent deed theft, when we're pausing the tax lien sale, when we're holding bad landlords accountable to the tune of $65 million, now here's a reason to believe. Mm-hmm. And what I've found is that it allows you to not only build a larger coalition, but it also allows you to show those who had the courage in the first place that they were right to hope.
Yeah. Where, maybe you haven't had to, but have you had to compromise a position you once in your head when you were running or earlier in your life that you thought was non-negotiable that you've had to compromise on?
I never thought that I'd be delivering for Yankees fans, but I am delivering for every New Yorker, and that's a new reality.
There's got to be a different one than the Yankees.
I didn't think I'd be doing that, but here I am. And I think that just speaks to the fact that, you govern for everyone, not just for those who voted for you, for those who voted. Mm-hmm. There are 8.5 million people in the city. They want to see a better city. No matter how they feel about me, it's my job to do it.
Yeah. In that vein of maybe they are Yankees fans, but at the end of the day, the business community. There was lots of criticisms when you won. Business leaders and all the wealthy would leave town. I don't think that they did. There's the pied-à-terre tax that came out. You've been meeting with some of these CEOs.
Man, I do hate that they're that the tax on second homes worth over $5 million has been like siloed behind a phrase that most Americans don't understand. The pied-à-terre tax, that's not something most people recognize, right? Like, I think it's easy to use as a buzzword to just kind of confuse people, when in reality, all you have to do is be like, a tax on millionaire second homes that they don't live in. Like, I know that doesn't necessarily flow off the tongue as well, but people understand the concept that, hey, maybe if you have a $5 million home you're not living in New York City, a place strapped for space, then maybe you should pay a higher tax on that. Like, that's incredibly, incredibly reasonable.
Jamie Dimon, Ken Griffin, to name two. Is this you trying to smooth those relationships over for the benefit of the New Yorkers?
This is my meeting with business leaders who have an important role to play in our city. And I wish every New Yorker success in this city. I wish for business leaders that they continue to contribute to what is a strong economy. And
it also makes it sound less scary to the average person. I think if you use more mundane language to describe the tax, I do think that makes it less scary, because by using like that buzzword, you can apply scary connotations to it, even if people don't know what it means. Yeah, call it the status tax or something. Like call it the excess homes tax.
Create good paying jobs. And I also know that in these meetings, when I speak to business leaders, that even amongst their own employees, they are not immune to the affordability crisis. You can be making six figures and still blink when you realize you have to.
Thanks, President Trump, for banning trans therapy for children. It's not banned. I don't know what to tell you guys. You guys live in a fucking nonsense land.
Spend $20,000 a year on childcare for a single child. And so what I see in them is also the opportunity to partner, to work together. You know, when I was sitting with Jamie Dimon, we spoke about the ways in which we could make the public sector as efficient and excellent as possible. Because no matter a policy disagreement on taxation structure or things of that nature, we both agree that we need to have the...
Which, let's be clear, Jamie Dimon only sat down to talk with Zohran Mamdani about tax structures. Jamie Dimon doesn't give a shit about the efficiency of the public system. Like, at all.
Best possible city government in the city that delivers by example and wins through that example.
I like that, Quigley, the absentee homeowners tax.
Yeah, and that taxation plan, are they more inclined to be
Ooh, call it the Golden Tower tax? That's good. I like that one the best, Amber Brains.
all right with it now that you guys have met? What I've heard is that when you have those meetings, people leave feeling a little bit differently than they did before.
Well, I think I look to make clear that the plan is not one that is built around wanting to target any one group of people. It is rather out of a belief for a fairer system of taxation and a way to make sure that everyone can afford to live in this city. I think you'll still find that most people who make more than $1 million would prefer not to pay more in taxes for that more than $1 million. But I think that most New Yorkers understand that in the most expensive city in the United States of America, we do have to do more to make sure that working people can still afford to live here.
You brought up immigration and ICE detention camps. Homeland Security Secretary Mullen suggested so-called sanctuary cities like New York, quote, shouldn't be processing international flights. JFK handles more international traffic than any airport in the country. If the administration follows through, that is real economic pain and just a headache for folks that fly through here and the New Yorkers. Beyond saying values aren't bargaining chips, what's the plan to make sure they don't, if they move on JFK?
I think the first thing is to make clear that, you know, we have heard many of these kinds of threats before. We will fight each and every one of them, because these are not just threats to the principles of our city, they're also threats to the economy of our city and the way in which our city runs. And we are confident in our ability to do so, because this city is not just the economic heartbeat of our state, it's also the economic heartbeat of our country. And we're looking to deliver the best possible experience, especially at a time when the World Cup is coming, for tourists who are visiting the city. And ideas and suggestions such as this, they just try and throw that into jeopardy, and we're not going to accept that.
Do you feel like you've seen a difference since Mullen has taken over when it comes to immigration enforcement in the country?
You know, I think you can change who's running.
I do find it very interesting. Do you think that things have changed? And it's just like, nah, they still want to send ICE into New York City. They are trying to figure out how to do it and not have ICE reviled and organized against, like what happened in Minneapolis. And like, Markwayne Mullen came up with literally the dumbest idea, which was essentially, what if we shoot our economic dick in the balls? What if we just take a gun and shoot it, our dick and balls at the same time? That'll show blue cities. And it's like, God damn, you guys are stupid. What if we just ended any kind of international business travel into our biggest economic hubs?
The agency, but by and large, what you will find is the same vision that has cruelty at the heart of it. And I think it's time for us to develop a vision on immigration that has a little more humanity as what guides it.
Just over the River here in New Jersey. There's the Delaney facility. There are folks there that are on hunger strike over the conditions. What's your reaction? And I guess more importantly for New Yorkers, what prevents a facility like that from opening here in New York?
I think there are a few things. One is a reaction of pain at seeing what people have to go through in these kinds of facilities. And these are conditions that they offend the conscience of so many, not just here in New York City, but frankly across the country. This is partially why I have put forward a vision alongside so many others to say that ICE should be abolished, that there is no way to reform this kind of cruelty that we're seeing endemic in the way that immigration is being enforced across the country. When it comes to our city, we are proud of our sanctuary city policies. We are proud of the policies we've put forward and also the executive orders we've put forward to ensure that every single agency is complying with those policies.
What do you say to people who say language, and there's Democrats in DC who say language like abolish ICE or unhelpful for the political health of the Democratic Party?
I think if we've listened to them before and look where we are.
Humanity, if you're here illegally, go back to your country of origin. I don't know why that's so controversial. Because you're effectively saying if somebody comes here and is undocumented, the crime of being undocumented means that their entire life that they may have built here should be uprooted and destroyed in order to send them back to a potentially dangerous situation. And the reality is, being undocumented in America is the same level of like I don't even think it's a misdemeanor. It's like a civic violation as like a parking ticket. Like it's literally the same type of violation. And I just look at that and I think to myself, well, your life isn't destroyed because of a parking ticket. What do? You go and you pay a fine. It gets documented in a system. You're A-okay. Why should someone who gets in trouble for parking wrong be treated so differently for someone who it just isn't documented within our system? The solution here isn't a costly ethnic cleansing campaign that enriches private companies. The solution here is to just document them. That's it. And then if they commit like actual crimes, then like our legal system can sort that out. But like, if the question is why, like, oh man, why should we, like, what? I mean, just like think with your fucking head. What does it cost more to do? Print out like a piece of paper, or to get someone a plane ticket and to like imprison them for months, if not years? Like, it's not difficult to figure out what the actual solution should be, just on an economic basis or a moral basis. Like, it's pretty clear cut. And the only reason I can think people support this policy is because either they haven't thought about it, or they just want to do the ethnic cleansing. And like, if you just want to do the ethnic cleansing, like, you're just a bigot. You're a racist. You shouldn't be in charge of doing any kind of policy. Seems pretty straightforward to me.
I think it's time to develop a new vision for this party, one that is unflinching in its beliefs and also uncompromising in its principles. And one of those principles has to be that Americans need not walk down the street fearful of the fact that they might be shot dead by federal agents in masks without badges.
There was the Israel Day parade over the weekend.
Before we get into this, I actually found the interview that I referenced earlier. Let's take a listen real quick. This is from WNYC, was posted June 2nd. Only has 474 views on YouTube, so we might be adding a significant chunk of the viewership here. Let's take a look.
You know?
And you too.
Great. I've heard you speak on many occasions about the love and support you feel for trans New Yorkers. As the parent of a trans child who's lost their health care from NYU and is now part of their criminal subpoena, I appreciate your being an outspoken advocate, but our community needs more than words right now. We want to know what specific measures your administration will take to guarantee access to health care for trans children and adults. With the ongoing attacks from the federal government and lack of support from New York State, we need more than a Know Your Rights campaign. We need concrete legal protections and financial support from the city. What is your plan to back up your commitment?
Raina, first, I just want to say thank you for your advocacy and being on the front lines of this. And I want to send love to you and your family and having to deal with what is truly just cruelty from the federal government. Because we all know that here in our city, every single New Yorker deserves access to comprehensive, life-saving health care. And my administration is committed to protecting that right and to ensuring that trans and gender nonconforming New Yorkers have the resources they need to live with dignity. And to your point, it's not enough to just celebrate pride in our language. It's not enough to just speak about the ways in which we will continue to ensure that this city remains a haven for queer people across not just the country, but the world. We're also proud to have committed over the course of our previous budgets, we've put forward $15 million to gender affirming care over the next 2 years to ensure that we can start to bridge the gap of the funding that has been stripped of this care. And alongside that, I'm proud to have created the first ever mayor's office of LGBTQIA plus affairs, which is headed by Director Taylor Brown, with a mission to advance equity and justice for LGBTQ plus New Yorkers across our city. And I say that because we know that this struggle is one that will continue for quite some time, and we see how queer New Yorkers disproportionately are facing higher levels of homelessness, of poverty, and I'm incredibly excited at us having an office led by such a stalwart New Yorker with a mission to illuminate the ways in which city government can actually deliver for New Yorkers in this way, because the work is frankly just beginning on this.
How specifically will that reopen access to gender-affirming care for...
Also, Brian Lehrer, great follow-up question.
...trans kids whose parents, like apparently the caller, want that if places like NYU are shutting it down over federal pressure?
The $15 million that we have committed is funding that would unlock exactly that. And it speaks to the fact that whether it's Raina's experience or so many others across the city, there are explicit consequences from both the cruelty that we're seeing from the federal government's policies and the decisions that are being made by private healthcare institutions here in New York City.
Raina, thank you for your call.
So, again, light on specifics, though he's pretty clear here, like, he is working on it, and their program is designed to ensure some kind of care gets resumed. But yeah, very vague indeed. I want more specifics. In fact, I want to listen back again to his response to Brian Lehrer.
Sure. The $15 million that we have committed is funding that would unlock exactly that. And it speaks to
shutting it down over federal pressure.
So I guess his argument here in response to Brian Lehrer is that the $15 million that is earmarked for trans-affirming healthcare of all ages is designed to go to hospitals that have shut down the care in order for them to resume it. So hopefully the argument, like just putting this together, and again, I know I'm putting a lot of hopium out there, but the argument seems to be that a finalized New York budget would include $15 million that then hospitals could cut federal funds going into trans youth care. And the $15 million would then be provided directly from the city so that the federal government cannot simply say, well, our federal funds are being used in a way we are deeming is inappropriate. Time to strip them all away. So, like, I think that's the attempt here. That's like what he's saying is going to happen. But I want more details. I want more details.
You say to New Yorkers who heard you saying, basically, I'll protect the parade. I won't stand in it. It was a promise you made, I think, during the campaign. What I hear from some folks is that they said, it felt like I'll keep you safe, but won't stand with you. And then also, what do you say?
I'm not really impressed by his answer either, Dragonfly. Like, again, the vagueness on this point is infuriating.
The New Yorkers outraged that members of the administration marched with an Israeli official who called for the total annihilation.
Sharia law won't tolerate gays and trans people, just saying cope more, I guess. nowhere in the United States has Sharia law. And also, let's be very clear, folks like you who are not presumably Muslim are way less tolerant towards gay and trans people than most Muslims in the United States. Frankly, I'm more worried about folks like you because, like, y'all are the ones who are being like, oh, they just want to throw you off of buildings. You guys get weirdly happy about the idea of throwing gay people off of buildings, you know? And I find that disturbing.
Of Gaza's cities, the finance minister, Smotrich.
You know, I've made clear time and time again over the course of the campaign my criticisms of the Israeli government. And you can see in the participation of the far-right Israeli minister Smotrich, as well as a number of other ministers, a vision of annihilation, a complicity in genocide, and frankly, a belief that does not have much value for even the sanctity of children in Gaza. And I am offended, as I know many New Yorkers are, by their participation. And when it comes to...
I don't get it. I think the vagueness is a smart move. I think part of it is that I can see a reality where the vagueness is a smart move, which is why I'm kind of like, I'm frustrated by this, but I maintain a hope that this is going to work out for the better. But I fully understand trans people, and especially people, allies, fellow trans people who work with trans youth, being deeply enraged by the vagueness, right? Like, I understand it might be part of a plan, but the plan is, we're being asked to take the plan on faith. And I think that is a really difficult thing, especially for the trans community at the moment, to do, because we've been screwed over time and time again. Our faith is very often not rewarded when it comes to political figures. And I think that that is the problem I run into, and I think the problem a lot of other trans people run into.
Members of my administration, I allow them to make...
Yeah, it's a big ask.
...their own decisions as to what marches they would like to participate in. However, as I've said time and time again, as the mayor of the city, I need not be present to ensure the security of a march, and also that this is a march to celebrate Israel. That is something that many New Yorkers attended, many New Yorkers did not. When it comes to the sanctity and the security of Jewish life in the city, that is something that we are fully committed to ensuring that each and every Jewish New Yorker is not just safe in the city, but is celebrated and cherished by the city.
Yeah, because what do you say to some of the Jewish New Yorkers who still feel like, you know, they don't have a place here because of your own stances, whether that's fair or not?
Well, I would say that, you know, criticisms of the Israeli government are different from criticisms of a religious faith. Yeah. And there are many who share those criticisms in this city. And what unites all of us, no matter how we feel about the Israeli government, is a belief that Jewish New Yorkers are a critical part of this city. They have been, they always will be, and we're going to do everything we can to ensure that's the case. And I know one of the points of concern has been the rise in anti-Semitism that we've seen across the country. And a commitment I made on the campaign was to increase funding for hate crime prevention by 800%. And that's something...
Oh, Muslims are trying to push Sharia law. Just look at the UK. Yeah, when I look at the UK, I see white people rioting and burning down the houses of minorities. I don't think the risk in the UK is of the coming British caliphate. Something tells me that the white ethno-nationalists in the UK are a bigger threat.
We fulfilled in our executive budget, adding $26 million, because so often the only answer we have to hate crimes is responding to it, to condemn it after the fact. We want to invest in the tools that can actually prevent those hate crimes from happening. That's what we're doing.
What are those kind of tools?
Those are the kinds of tools that also really focus on education and our young people, because what we've seen time and time again is a belief that with time comes understanding.
Yeah, again, the only people saying Sharia law is being pushed anywhere in the United States or in the UK, like, the only people saying that are the biggest morons to ever exist. Like, you could literally jingle a set of keys in front of them and say, these are magic keys. Give me all of your money and they'll unlock your dreams. And they would do it. It's crazy.
And knowledge and what we...
Some people say if you play a pipe just right in front of some of these MAGA chuds, they'll follow you anywhere. It's crazy. They'll prance right out of town.
we've actually seen is that if you're not teaching our young children, especially about the lessons of this history, then we will see echoes of that history.
We talked about the Democratic Party just a little bit. I want to get back to that. I won't ask you about the autopsy unless you have thoughts that you'd like to share. I didn't think so. In the Times Siena poll, twice as many Democrats recently said that the party should move to the center rather than the left to win. It was 52 to 25. You are one of the most prominent figures on the party's left flank. How does the left win over more people in the Democratic Party?
By delivering. You know, there's a lot of talk about the debate and what we have in.
This is the thing, right? Like, fundamentally, that is Zohran Mamdani's position on everything, which is that he needs to deliver. Otherwise, what is the point of him being in office? What is the point of building a leftist movement if, when a socialist actually wins office, nothing gets done? Which is why he has a heavy focus on getting shit done.
Opportunity to do here in New York City is to deliver on that vision. You know, two people can argue all they want, but when you show somebody the ability to deliver free childcare for 2,000 two-year-olds this year, 12,000 two-year-olds next year, every two-year-old by the end of 4 years, it showcases what we're fighting for and why we believe so deeply in it. When we talk about the need to have a vision for working people, when you can point to the actually make a difference.
Sorry. That was a little tech goof.
That's what actually starts to win so many more people on your side. Otherwise, it just feels as if it's an intellectual debate.
You said to deliver, you also have to win. So, right. So, well, then it sounds like there's more pressure on people like you who actually have the power to actually do things to show that the rest of the left should also be elected in office. Is that what you're saying? Or how do you?
You are right. In order to deliver, you do have to win. And,
Yeah.
and I think for those of us who have won, we have this opportunity. And our job is to showcase that these were not just ideas on a campaign. These were commitments. We're now going to fulfill them. When we talked about affordable groceries, that's what we're going to actually fulfill. When we talked about delivering universal childcare, that's what we're fulfilling. And when we talked about doing all of these things while also paving over potholes, we're showing that you don't have to make that choice anymore between the biggest vision and the smallest problem.
You are one of those rare politicians. I know a lot of them. So you seem to understand the attention economy in kind of a different way than many of them. Many of them are older. There's all the videos online. There's the pothole clips. I don't know which one of your team came up with that. Now you have this Twitch show, Talk with the People. What should Democrats be doing differently to message directly to folks, or to go through the media to do it? But
Yeah, also this Talk with the People show is interesting. I thought about covering this, but haven't gotten around to it yet. Like, it's a show where it's just kind of like a fireside chat.
Directly from your city about what we're doing and why we're doing it. So let's get into it. Here are a few things we did just this week.
Basically, every week he's having a sit down on YouTube and explaining what they're doing. Might be a good area to ask him about trans kids in particular, or a venue for that. I know that there's also a Twitch version, and maybe the Twitch version is more responsive to chatter input, stuff like that.
change the way that they're doing it?
I think we have to ask ourselves, how are people consuming the news? How are they understanding the world around them? And then meet them there. Yeah. We can't pat ourselves on the back and say, you know, I have this one way to talk to people and it's really sad that nobody's listening to me. Yeah. We have to push ourselves. And I think that's a real understanding within our own team here at City Hall, is that we have to be relentless in making sure that we're speaking to each and every New Yorker. We've been on social media, on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. We speak to the news media. It wasn't until we did Twitch that there were a new set of younger New Yorkers who heard of us for the first time. We had someone who works here in City Hall. Their child came up to them and said this was the first time they'd ever heard of me. It was because of this show. And I think that just speaks to the fact that we cannot condescend any longer to the way people understand the world around them. We have to actually be there. And I think that also speaks to our politics. Too often, if you ask someone what they believe in, they're going to list off a 5-step program for what it is that they would deliver for you. People want to know, what are you going to do for rent? What are you going to do for housing? What are you going to do for gas? What are you going to do for groceries? We have to have answers to that, and that's what we're trying to show.
Do you think the leadership of the Democratic Party understands that?
I think that the party as a whole has lost its focus on working people, and I'm hopeful that we start to develop that. And frankly, we used to have that. You know, you
like this is what I find interesting. I find this to be a very clear condemnation of centrists within the Democratic Party, and a very clear, at least to me, declaration that there is now an ascendant movement within the Democratic Party of folks on the left who are willing to use their power to help working people. And I think that's deeply important, and I think that's indicative of what he's been doing. Specifically, like the Ben Shapiro ad where he like endorsed like 3 different candidates at once, who are also on the left in New York. I think what he is doing is building a coalition to get some shit done. Starting with New York City, moving on to New York State, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess that that is not going to be sufficient. He's going to build it out from there.
Look at the 4 freedoms. You look at the real core of the New Deal. There was a moment when this party was unabashed about its focus on working.
Here's the funny part. No socialist country has ever survived in history other than Denmark, only because they have very few people. Behind the seal DTS, define socialism, please.
People, and I'm excited to bring it back there.
Yeah. On the left also, you have Graham Plattner in Maine. At least one of your campaign aides has gone from back and forth from them, Morris Katz. There have been plenty of scandals with Graham Plattner. As the party goes outside of kind of the political professional lane, is this the amount of scandals that end up happening with some of these folks? Is that just the doing business? Is that just what happens when you're changing the way that you...
When did we stop saying middle class and start saying working people? When the middle class got fucking murdered by the wealthiest people to ever exist.
You elect people, what's the line there?
Yeah, I think what I've found, I'll say my focus in New York City has been, how do we deliver on this affordability crisis? When I step back and I think about the party and the country as a whole, I've found that what people are focused on is, does your vision have room for them? Mm-hmm. And do they see their struggles in what you are fighting for? I think oftentimes that is more the primary focus than the individual who is fighting for them. And too often, I think that the focus has been misplaced when it should be on those ideas. And that's what I'm hopeful we can start to deliver on.
But is there a line of kind of moral clarity that the party should have on some of the things that we're saying?
You know, I think that we should find our leadership from rank and file Democrats who will show us what it is that they view as the guiding principles and who should be the champions of that. And I look forward to that over the course of elections that we'll see across the country. And here in New York City, I've endorsed a number of candidates that I believe are the exact kind of stalwarts we need in that, whether Daria Lisa Avila Chevalier, who's running for Congress, or Claire Valdez or Brad Lander, who are all also running for Congress.
See, this is what I mean. Like, he's basically saying, well, we're about to throw down, so I guess we'll see what happens. And I think that fighting spirit I find admirable. I do hope, again, it extends in all directions.
You brought up your endorsements. You live in New York 12. You won't endorse unless you want to right now.
Okay,
there's 4. Okay, I just want to check.
I will vote.
As a resident and the most influential voice in the district, what would a candidate have to do to get your vote?
You know, I think showcase an understanding of the priorities of constituents across the district. It's an incredible district to be a part of. It is also a district that's not immune to the affordability crisis and the pressures of that crisis. And I gotta say, being the mayor, it's a funny thing where I haven't actually received any campaign literature.
Zohran's extremely wealthy. And?
At all?
At all. Okay. I don't know where it's going.
Maybe they're scared.
but there was one candidate. There was one candidate who came to the gate and dropped off.
Ooh, okay, socialism is the theory of giving everyone the same, which sounds good until the motivation in some people can't carry the weight of the lazy. You think anyone is going to be a doctor for $0? Wrong. That's not what socialism is. Socialism is an economy primarily owned by the people who work in it. It is democratically run and operated. So if you work in the factory, you own part of the factory. You get to collectively decide, along with the fellow people who work at the factory, how the profits earned by your labor get used. That is socialism in action. Now, the idea here that it means everybody gets the same. That's not what that means. The idea that socialism is everyone gets the same paycheck. No. God damn. Like, I'm not even asking you to read theory. I'm asking you to just like actually understand what you're talking about. Please, conservatives and neoliberals, please, for the love of God, I'm just asking you, understand the terminology you use.
So I will be looking at that.
Do you think the people in New York deserve to know who you're going to
Socialism is a capped economy? No, incorrect, wrong.
vote for?
I've told them who I've endorsed, so I'm very excited about, and I can tell them I will vote, and when I make that decision, they'll see me.
The stock market is not a form of socialism. Like, my God, you guys.
Be casting my ballot.
We are going on to the 250th anniversary of this country.
Yes.
You came to this country as an immigrant, now lead its largest city as it turns 250. What does this anniversary mean?
I do need an incorrect buzzer sound on my soundboard. Like, I have a record scratch. I've got sad trombone. You own a piece of the company, sharing the profits. Yeah, but you don't work at the company. You don't work at the company if you are playing the stock market. The stock market is not indicative of the worker ownership of the company. Worker ownership of the company is, in fact, vitally important. And it's not worker ownership of another company that is unrelated to the work they do. It's worker ownership of the place that they work. Capitalism is the only economy where people can be rewarded for your efforts. No, the people who own the company get rewarded for the efforts of the workers. When workers produce more than what they are paid in wages, that more goes towards the company's profits. And where do the profits go? They don't go to the fucking workers. They go to the people who just happen to own the place. What I'm saying is a truly socialist model would be that the workers own the factory and then get to collectively decide how those profits get used, what their working conditions are, how much they get compensated, etc. And like, we know that this works. We already have it under capitalism in the form of companies like King Arthur Baking or Bob's Red Mill. You might be familiar with those. And I just want to point out, King Arthur Baking has been around for literal centuries. It is the oldest milling company in the United States. So, like, this idea that, like, oh, well, no, it means everyone gets paid the same. No, it doesn't. Oh, it means that the economy is capped. No, it doesn't. It only relates to ownership of the means of production. And the goal of changing that ownership is taking it from an ownership model that is largely tyrannical and shifting it towards a democratic, egalitarian ownership model. That's it. People who don't understand this simply have been stewing in propaganda for like the last entirety of their lives and never bothered to look beyond it, never bothered to look at where the concept of socialism comes from, what they were talking about. And like, man, just have some fucking curiosity about your worldview, you know?
You need this for vertical chat, for real.
I do. Cardstockcaster, thank you for the $5 dono. We do need that. This was the argument when we were a factory economy. We aren't. I'm using the factory analogy for simplicity. The democratic worker ownership model can apply to literally any company. Because all it means is that the people who work at a company own the company and get to decide what is done with the profits. That's it. It doesn't matter if we are talking about a factory. It doesn't matter if you're talking about a software developer. In fact, we have democratic worker co-ops that are software developers. The video game Dead Cells was made by one such developer. Like, this idea that like, oh, you can't have that. We literally have it right now. The argument is we should take that model of ownership and make it the predominant model of production in the United States via a variety of different programs. Tell me one socialist country that hasn't failed besides Denmark. There has never been a country where workers predominantly control the means of production. Not Denmark, not any country. And that's not because it doesn't work. We literally have those companies right now. And if you're saying, well, that model doesn't work for companies, then you have to account for the fact that it does seem to work for companies that have been around for quite some time. So make a company and run it that way. Luckily, you're free to do so. So far, I haven't needed to form a company. If I ever do need to form a company, I will model it that way. However, I'm going to throw this out there. My job is to advocate for a better political future. And a better political future, in my mind, is a more democratic one, a more egalitarian one, and one where workers collectively own the means of production. And what that means is workers own their workplace. That's what I advocate for, because I think that there's a lot of good arguments for that and a lot of good reasons for the state to want that to be the case. Like, people are like, oh, so do it and live that way. Like, well, my advocacy goes beyond just any one company. My advocacy goes towards, let's shift our entire economy towards a far more beneficial and egalitarian model that prevents the accumulation of power and wealth into the hands of like 10 people who then dictate the political future of our country. Why should everyone follow your rule? Because everyone would want to, if given the choice, work in a democratic worker co-op. We have the information on the democratic worker co-ops that exist. People get paid more. Their conditions are better. They have more agency within their workplace. They directly profit from being efficient and good at their jobs, which means, in turn, the companies that are democratically run are actually far more efficient as well. They are, because they prioritize the workers, they don't offshore the factories or the businesses. They also don't skimp out on paying their taxes. They also are far less likely to pollute their local environment that they all live in. And like, also, they're happier. And what I'm advocating for isn't an authoritarian, all companies must become democratic co-ops. What I'm advocating for is putting in place like incentives that make it easier for these companies to come into existence. And once we gather enough data, transition companies that want to be sold. First, they have to be sold to the workers. If the workers refuse, then they can be sold to another private company. Or, for example, if a company goes under and needs a government bailout, the government has every incentive to like turn it into a democratically owned and operated company that is, again, not run by the government, but run by the workers. And if you're not really picking up what I'm putting down, like, that's on you at this point. I would encourage you to liberate yourself from your own mental shackles, friend.
To you, and what story of America should we be telling on July 4th?
This anniversary to me is a celebration of everything this country has fought to be and everything we keep fighting to ensure that it not only remains, but it can become. And as you said, I came to this country at the age of 7, living in New York City, growing up in this city. One of my proudest moments was when I got to become a citizen of this country, and it was only a few blocks away from where we are right now. And I think in celebrating the 250th anniversary of our nation, we also celebrate the fact that every year our nation is reborn in that same image we were fighting against impunity, against tyranny, and with a belief in liberty. And even in the time from now until then, we will see so many more Americans being born, whether as children being born in our country or whether as people who are becoming citizens for the first time. And I can't wait to welcome them all here.
President Trump is doing the 250th celebration on the National Mall. He is headlining that after several artists pulled out because of how political it's become. When you think about marking the milestone of 250 for the whole country in a way that includes all Americans,
Rywix, welcome.
Doesn't appear to be what's happening or claiming it for one side. It feels like a lot of folks are looking at what the president is doing and has a lot of concerns about that.
I think that, as you said, we want to see a vision of this country that has room for everyone who calls it home. And I'm excited that New York City will be a part of that. I recently rewatched the seminal classic Hitch. I'm not sure if you've seen it. Yeah, they go to Ellis Island on a date. I think these are moments that...
Ooh, sound quality. Why?
That New Yorkers...
Is that the guy from Key and Peele? It does look like him. It does look like him, but it's not him.
and Americans, they really look to this city also in understanding our place, and we're excited to share a lot of those stories.
Last question for you here. You got 1,000 New Yorkers, $50 World Cup tickets, while fans everywhere are facing all these different prices and price gouging.
Sounds like you know what's best for people. Yeah, well, the purpose of putting into place a system that would encourage the development of democratic worker co-ops would be then that people could choose whether they want to work at a democratic worker co-op or a privately owned enterprise. And I think given the choice, informed workers would choose to work at a democratic worker co-op. That choice becoming commonplace, I think in turn would lead to the phasing out of privately owned capital. I'm not saying I know what's best. I'm saying we should have a system that prioritizes the kind of economic production model that is more efficient and more resilient and leads to happier, more productive workers who then get to reap the benefit of their labor. And I think that that's pretty reasonable, actually. And I think giving people a choice between working for themselves in a democratically owned context or working for the enrichment of a billionaire, I think most people aren't going to choose the latter.
Feels like a different way of doing politics than other people, like understanding that politics and culture are married and making things affordable to.
I would buy your argument if you demonstrated the experience of being a private business owner. I'm a solo business owner. So, in effect, I am a kind of private business owner. I am a sole proprietor, which is, in fact, a type of business owner. And I've been one for the last 16 years. 16 years? Is that right? 13 years.
Everyone is probably a better way to go. The World Cup coming here. Thoughts?
It's an opportunity to show that sports shouldn't be a luxury commodity.
Yeah.
You know, so many New Yorkers, what keeps us going is the love of our team or the love of the artist that we're listening to or watching. And
you also work with TACUS, which is technically a worker co-op. That's right. I forget that sometimes I forget that I work for a worker co-op in the form of the Transatlantic Call-In Show. I just enjoy being on it so much. I forget that it's a different job. Yeah, so I guess technically I also work for a democratic worker co-op.
Yet when they come to town, people have to think about foregoing a rent payment to perhaps being able to see them. And one of the things that I wanted to make clear is that we recognize the fact that soccer is at its core a working class game. We want to make sure that people can actually dream of attending these games. And so these $50 tickets, it makes it actually much more in reach. We just announced as well that we're going to have $25 tickets for a few of the friendlies in the lead up to the World Cup. But as you said, we want the affordability crisis to be understood not just in terms of the things that struggle to allow New Yorkers to live here, but also the things that allow New Yorkers to breathe here. I mean, we're talking right now during an incredible Knicks run. You know, we are in the finals for the first time since 1999. It feels
Knicks in 5, baby!
Like the city is alive. This is what sports can do. We're hopeful the World Cup will be the same.
I'll let you go without asking you about the Arsenal. I know they lost. I'm told.
How you going to stab me? How you going to stab me on live television?
Right at the end. Sir, thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Thank
Real
you.
pleasure.
This was great, but I do appreciate that within all of the charismatic smiles and such, there is a glint of steel, you know? This threat against the incumbent Democratic Party that has for far too long been defending the status quo, when it's very clear the status quo is not good enough for the vast majority of Americans anymore. Like, things have been getting worse and worse and worse. That's plainly evident to anyone who's been paying attention to working class folks. We took a look the other day at an NPR article that showed something around 50% of Americans can't afford necessities anymore. And like, that's, I'm not an economist, but I can tell you that's bad. So getting an economy that works for working class people, getting a country that works for working class people, I think is a top tier concern. Now, to answer, how would a socialist run company obtain financing for a startup? Number one, the individuals doing the startup would pool their money together, potentially come up with, and start it up that way. Potentially, they could pool the money together and put up equity in like houses or what have you to take out a bank loan for the purposes of the company. Now, to your point, it is harder for a democratic worker co-op to get that startup capital, which is why one of the things that I advocate for is a method of the federal government or the state or the local government offering incentives or even just straight up loan programs to provide the capital itself as a loan to these democratic worker co-ops that are aiming to start up. Mainly because a lot of private banks are not going to lend money to companies that are, not chasing the profit motive above all else, right? Democratic worker co-ops prioritize the workers, not profits. That's a big problem when your business loan is contingent on prioritizing profits, which most banks are looking for. It makes it more of a sure thing for the loan in the eyes of traditional banking companies. However, it is in the government's best interest to invest in democratic worker co-ops because democratic worker co-ops pay their taxes and aren't going to offshore or like move their companies, because once a democratic worker co-op starts, the workers want to live in the communities where they started. They don't want to go anywhere. People in the workers at a company are not going to be like, hey, we should move our company to another country, or we should move our company to a different state. They don't do that. And they are also better at surviving harsh economic times. So if they have a longer survivability rate as well. Like the survival time of democratic co-ops is quite large compared to traditional businesses. And I think that all of this indicates that it would be a much better source of revenue, both tax-wise and loan-wise, for democratic worker co-ops to be invested in by the state and local level at least. So that's kind of where I'm at. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed this, I understand this has been a rambly as hell segment, but if you guys got anything out of this, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment. Comments really help in the algorithm, so let me know what you think about socialism or Zohran Mamdani or trans kids. Let me know what you think in the comments. And also, you feel free to call me too Pollyannish if you think that I'm overly optimistic about Zohran and restoring like trans youth care. I'm open to that criticism, of course. And also, get involved with your local Dems. Get involved with your local DSA. We need people to organize within the Democratic Party to push it farther left. We need people within the local DSA in order to make it better at organizing working people in the communities. And if you need help getting started with either of those, you can join our Discord, reach out to Dragonfly for help with your local Dems, reach out to GamerG for help with your local DSA. We want to get you started, and we also want to give you the tips and tricks to like do well at organizing within these organizations. And we have years of experience to support you with. So do consider getting started with that. You can, in fact, by the way, when you do so, begin pushing legislation for eliminating Citizens United as the law of the land within your state. You can use the Montana initiative as a model for that within whatever state you're at. You can push for a moratorium on data centers. You can end ICE contracts with 287G agreements. Was that it? I might be getting the numbers wrong. But you can end coordination between your local sheriffs and ICE. You can do a lot of things to help improve your community, keep it safe, etc. And I do hope you will do so. If you want to get plugged directly into door knocking and phone banking campaigns, of course you can do that through DSA as well as through your local Dems, but you can also do it through Progressive Victory. There's a link down below for you to get started with them as well. We want to give you all the options, all right? And last but not least, check out ImogeneOlivia.com, gender euphoric lingerie designed from the ground up for trans femmes, also tested with cis men, cis women, non-binary folks. It is comfortable, sexy lingerie that is non-tucking. Go check it out, ImogeneOlivia.com. Link down in the description. Let's keep on going.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather around. Twitch and YouTube every swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, daily, plenty more. Your sense of fashion, you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard.